Still 4 minutes left.
Oh, what a giveaway!
I'm just going to do the same thing, and the same thing is oolong tea and chamomile. Yeah, probably chamomile, if it doesn't come from a tea bag, is a little bit better, but it just gives a little bit more taste to the thing, the tea, because green tea in itself sometimes has a bit like a kind of an off taste, but it's very good. So when I started drinking green tea, I realized it was often giving me stomach cramps, and later I realized or learned that I had stomach cramps because the green tea was actually attacking like fungal overgrowth in your colon, and I often had stomach cramps but also diarrhea. So if you react to strong green tea with diarrhea, that means you probably have to do some kind of cleansing, because it's already like all these fungi, they're having a feast in your system, and you're feeding them probably by eating sugar and stuff all the time. And I'm gonna get to, actually I didn't restart yet, right? I mean, I said, I'm gonna start at 8, but I mean, I can't pretend anymore. I mean, I really like standing here and just talking about stuff, because what else, right? I mean, I just, this is what I chose. So if you really choose something, then it's very hard to stop that. And that's the position I'm in at the moment. I started this, I realized I'm actually good at it, so why stop? So yeah, I was just lying down for a little, and then I realized this is boring, right? I thought I could watch a movie, and then I said, why don't I just make my own movie, and then I can even talk about green tea and chamomile. And the water is almost boiling. And I missed my cue to put something into the kettle. So just bear with me for a second, because now I'm like scatterbrained and stuff. Where is the teaspoon? Oh my god, it's not there anymore. Life's gonna stop in any minute. Life's gonna stop any second now. Yeah. It's already so clean, but... What? Alright. I would suggest that's like lesson number... I don't know what. Take what you have. If you cannot find a teaspoon, you might as well take your hands. So roughly the amount of... Yeah. 3 teaspoons, adequately heaped, is now in the teapot. Alright. That's that. So, right, whoever is going to sit on the other side of the screen and wants to listen to this, all I can say to you is that it's always your choice to be here. It's always your choice to be here, and you can leave anytime, and that's the great thing. I'm gonna do this anyway when I feel like it, and right now I feel like it because every time I lie down or I want to take rest, all this stuff starts to come up and out of myself. Well, it doesn't really come out of myself at first. What happens is that stuff starts to come up, and then I feel uneasy about ignoring it, and then eventually a resolution starts to form, and I say, God damn it, what am I going to rest for? Right? I mean, okay, I feel too weak at the moment to stand behind my screen and do some kind of artwork, because somehow I have the feeling right now I just don't want to do that, right? I want to rather say something. I want to rather stand and move, but if I'm standing, I can't really move when my hands are occupied with the keyboard or the laptop, right? As much fun as it is sometimes to do this, I also have to have moments where I can do this, and right now I just didn't feel like dancing or something. I just didn't feel like doing that because I felt like talking. And the reason I felt like talking is because often I have this quite a lot. That I'm doing this kind of stuff, this kind of work, and then certain words come up in myself. And one of these words is hide. Yeah, hide. And the other one is, just say nothing, just punish them for not following you by the millions. That's the other one, where I think, I'm gonna hide now so that they're gonna get interested because now I'm hiding. And so maybe they're gonna start missing me, and then they're just gonna suddenly start following me. And then I think, that's the kind of stuff. I'm not the only one who thinks like this, right? And there's a reason why I think like this, probably. And maybe, I was doing that sometimes as a child. I would hide myself so well, and nobody would find me, and I would just sit it out. And then suddenly people started looking for me. But I feel like, I'm not a child anymore. Because sometimes I was hiding myself somewhere, and people were looking for me, and I just said nothing. I was just imagining a miniature version of myself. But the funny thing is that the miniature version of myself, which was, the child version of myself, looked like me now, only like a bit compressed. Because that's how I feel a bit about, being a child. It's a bit like this, your voice is a bit like, it's like, what? You've been compressed into this little shape, and then you start growing, and then suddenly I'm like, yeah, now I'm here, now I'm here. I'm standing here in my own life, and I'm filming myself in my room, right? Yeah, so hide and say nothing. That was literally how I was being treated as a child, right? I was in school and I wanted to speak up, I wanted to move, I wanted to do things, I wanted to jump around, right? I had full, all that potential and energy. And then they said, sit still, say nothing, right? Unless we talk to you, you're supposed to be quiet and say nothing. Or stuff like, play with your brother. Like, why? People think just because you're siblings, you have to be friends or something. take care of him, take care of her, blah, 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 right? I mean, sometimes siblings just don't play together because, you know, somehow they just don't connect well, right? Sometimes people just don't connect well. And that's just how it is, right? I mean, why would you bring people together and then force them to like each other? I mean, I can like you, but I don't have to spend time with you. I mean, isn't that right? I mean, I can like you, you know, or just accept you. Okay, I acknowledge that this is a person, but I don't really have to spend time with you. And that's then my own choice, right? I mean, there is a lot of people, probably, you know, 99% is still too little an amount to describe the amount of people that I rather would not spend time with, because I like spending time alone. So if we have, I don't know how many is it now, 8 or 9 billion people or something like this, you know, and then I'm one person and I enjoy spending time alone and I enjoy having my own show, right? I enjoy standing in front and proclaiming about the things that I've realized throughout my life while spending time alone. And that means if I would spend a lot of time with a lot of people that want to talk to me, then that would mean I cannot be alone and figure out how to solve certain problems, because that takes a lot of time. So my game is, you know, I'm here to say to you what you think you might want to hear, right? Or what humanity needs to hear. That's partly my job. And partly that is saying, you know, we really need to change, right? We really need to change, right? We have to stop all this. We have figured it out because we got science, and maybe to you that's getting a little old, but the fact is that we're still in the same situation. I mean, 2 hours later from my last recording, nothing much has changed. And that means, apparently, you know, we still need to hear this stuff, because if there aren't any people out there saying that science is just creating crap, like everything science creates is basically, you know, they think they're solving something, but while they're trying to solve something, they create so many problems. Who's gonna solve them? And that's apparently when you talk about predicaments, like what is a predicament? It's something that is so complicated that you can't really understand it. And you cannot narrow it down, right? You can't really narrow it down to one thing. Or most people cannot narrow it down. Because you could say, what's a predicament? A predicament seems to be climate change, right? It seems to be such a complicated thing for most people. You know, they don't really know how it's happening. Is it carbon dioxide, or is it this, or is it that? You know, is it the sun, you know, that's radiating stronger? And then to some people like me, you know, I look at it and I say, well, it's fairly easy, man. I mean, we're hacking down all the trees, right? We're hacking down the lungs of the earth. You know, if I don't breathe, I'm getting fairly hot. You know, if you see a dog that is hot, what does the dog do? Yeah, he's breathing, so he's ventilating his insides, and that gets stuff out. And, right, you know, I can keep saying this all day, because apparently not enough people have heard this yet, but, I mean, anybody who has ever been in a forest in summer, and it's like really hot, it's like 30 degrees Celsius, and you go into the forest and suddenly it's like, oh, that's nice and comfortable. I mean, what more do you have to understand about climate? What more do you have to understand than this? You know, you go on a hot day into a forest and suddenly it's colder. The air in the forest is cooler than the air outside of the forest. You know, that's something that is so simple to understand that I cannot get why we say that what is heating up the climate is carbon dioxide. Because what's heating up the climate is surely that there is heat anyway, because heat is coming from up and down and all kinds of places. And then we have been given trees by nature, right? These things are already there, who produce cooler climate, and any forest is a rainforest and it makes rain, right? It cools the climate. If you have a lot of forest, it cools the climate. It provides you with food, right? And it creates rain, which is basically everything we need to live. Yeah. And so when I try to get into this and I say, hide and say nothing, I cannot do that anymore because it's so stupid. I mean, it is so stupid what's happening. All these people that say, oh, I know what's going on, and then I know what's going on, and then anybody who really says what's going on is just like, yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He has no degree in climatology. Oh, but listen to this. I have a degree in environmental protection, so now you have to listen to me. Listen to this. It's on my website if you don't believe me, right? Oh yeah, that maybe it's, No, I have a degree in environmental protection, right? And that degree has been issued by a University of Applied Science, which has been sanctioned by the state, which means I am allowed by your scientists and your governments to have an opinion that is valid on environmental protection. Because I have been trained by you to understand how climate works, right? And what is affecting the environment. And I have spent adequate time to look at what in this system is affecting the environment. And apart from cars making the air toxic and the water toxic, and humans just exploiting the earth, one part of this is the climate is getting hotter because we are cutting down all the trees. And then you have to look at terms like evapotranspiration, right? It's like the sweating of the forest. And what does sweating do? It emits heat, heat from the inside. It's being drawn out, brought to the outside. Makes sense, doesn't it? On a hot day, your body starts to sweat. So you feel a little bit cooler. And then the wind comes, and then you get goosebumps, and suddenly you feel a bit chilly. Then you put on a jacket, because the sweating actually cooled your body. Oh, so if a forest is sweating, that then certainly might mean that he is bringing heat out. He's extracting heat and sending it out into the air with water that then comes down as rain. Yeah, and the extra tension and the extra heat, the excess energy that is being put into the atmosphere can then at one point relieve itself in a giant thunderstorm. This is how nature is supposed to manage itself. Yeah, and that's what humans try to change because they want to control nature. So they drive around, they fly around with planes and they put these, how's it called? Silver alloy, I don't really know how that's called. They just put that into the air because I think that accumulates water or something. They can create clouds and stuff. They're trying to affect the weather. And that just screws up a lot of stuff. And then they put up dams so that they cut off the water from certain areas. I mean, everybody has heard of Nestle, that kind of go to a certain area and then they seal off all the water and then they manage the water in an area, and that's how they create deserts and stuff. Because they want to sell water. That's where they make money by selling water. Right? And then the state extracts water from everything that they control, you know, by putting up stuff like canalization. You know, it's not just there to that our shit gets away, because they also suck up all the water, and then so that they can feed all these households, but they also make money with that. And so how am I supposed to just sit here in this room when I have all this knowledge that I was supposed to have, because that's a degree that you could study, and I studied it, and now I have all this knowledge, and I just feel like, you know, I cannot work for governments, I cannot work for corporations, because what I see is they have no interest to protect the environment. And I want to protect the environment, but to go around and advertise electric cars for the state isn't really what I see as environmental protection. Because what I see as environmental protection is to plant more trees and to make sure that the forests we still have are being preserved, and that we start making an effort to make them bigger again, so that we take the forests that are still left to us, like Amazonian rainforest and any forest that we have, and we build from that, and we start getting used to having more trees again. Because what I hear, these kind of stories from people that live in an area where there's a lot of houses, and then they keep cutting down the trees because they say, well, this person had no sun on the balcony, so the tree had to go. Or maybe the chirping of birds was disturbing him. I mean, are you kidding? Are you kidding me? You're cutting down trees because you're having an allergic reaction to a birch? Like, is that your reason to cut down trees? I mean, I'm sorry, but because you are full with toxic stuff and you are so alienated from nature, you cut down trees because your nose is runny? You know, when my allergies stopped, because I had, you know, kind of asthma and these kind of things, you know, when they stopped? When I started cleansing, detoxifying, when I started to go more into nature, and nature literally cleansed all this shit out of me. You know, we call these things allergic reactions, but don't you see that it's a form of cleansing? Like, if you have an allergic reaction to maybe peanuts, you know, why is that there? Because your body is already so sensitive, because it's already so sick, that peanuts just too much. It's something like this, right? I mean, these things are fairly complicated, but in terms of, you know, you just have to cleanse your system. Because if your system cannot deal with peanuts, then there's something already wrong with your system. And that means you probably have to do a lot of cleansing. Because whatever they say about vaccinations, you just have to think about what's in these things. Sometimes there's a lot of heavy metals in there. You know, what kind of stuff is that going, you know, how is that going to affect you? You don't know that. But heavy metals are heavy metals that shouldn't be injected into your bloodstream, whatever they say. And that's not conspiracy, that's just like common knowledge. That's just, oh wow, I mean, could have thought about that once, right? So hide and say nothing doesn't really work anymore, because that's what everybody is doing. And that's what they want. They want that we hide and say nothing. And who's they? It's like everybody who makes money with this. I mean, have you ever watched the documentary? It's not a documentary, it's a movie, but it pictures, you know, Thank You for Smoking, it's called. It pictures literally how the smoking industry was fully aware of the toxicity of smoking, but they still drove their, right, they still wanted to sell it. They didn't care. They didn't even smoke themselves because they knew it was toxic. But they still advertised it heavily. and they paid people to smoke in the streets, and like models that stand around with cigarettes, right? And so that people think it's cool to do this. Oh yeah. To me, it just looks stupid. People who are smoking just look like idiots. Oh yeah. Like, why is that cool? You know what that means in Australia? That means fuck you. Because it has something to do with, right, some people who were pulling strings or something, right? Bows and arrows, shooting. And I think there was something about cutting that off. Not quite sure. Something like that. Yeah, so apparently this means peace or victory, and this means fuck you. So, I mean, you just have to be careful what you do with your hands or something. I don't know. But so, I mean, some of us have to look at the nasty bits. Very often I talk to people. Yeah, we have a conversation and maybe somebody calls me and yeah, they're having a bad time, and then we're having a call, and you know, I try to be happy, but then I say stuff like, I mean, I say basically what I'm saying now. I say, well, because sometimes people say to me, yeah, don't you think you should get another job and just earn money somewhere else? And then I say, well, I have a bit of a problem with that, because anybody I could work for is probably only interested in money and I'm interested in speaking the truth. So, you know, I had this problem already when I was working for the cinema, and I couldn't do it. You know, I couldn't just stand there and sell junk food to children. Especially, you know, there was one kid and he just vomited. And I cleaned that away, and that was one of the moments where I said, I'm out of here. I am out of here and I don't want to do this anymore. And then just stopped going to the cinema because it disgusted me. And what disgusted me even more, that I was contributing to this, to the continuation of this. Not so much, you know, it's not like just because I don't go there anymore, it's going to stop suddenly. You know, this is going to continue for a while still. But at least I don't stand there with a smile and act like I like this. And that's, you know, when I do a job, I want to be able to at least smile to myself about it and say, you know, I like that I'm standing here and that I'm speaking the truth, because this is what is in my heart. And the truth is, you have to look at everything that's going on. You know, you may call that the holistic approach. Because right now we are in this dilemma, that there are people who think that science is our savior. So how do you deal with that kind of stuff? You know, how do you talk to people like this to make them understand that science is creating most of the problems that we are trying to solve? Right? I mean, climate change is a problem that has been generated partly by science, or just humanity in general, because I mean, we started cutting down trees before science was around. But science is surely one of the ways in which we say, oh yeah, we're like doing really well. Or are we? Like, are we? People are really obese. People are really sick. Like, people have no idea how to deal with fear. People don't know how to move. People just waste away in front of their TVs. Everybody's kind of alone and selfish and secluded. You know how life used to be, right? It's like sitting around the fire together. Bum, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Have you ever tried playing the drums for a large amount of time? You know how much strength and you know what a good condition you need, physical condition, to keep that up for hours. I mean, you need a lot of mental stability to just keep that going. Yeah, if you start drumming here, people say, oh, it's too loud, what are you doing? It's like battle drums, mate. It's like dun 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 dun. You're scaring me now. Oh, really? So, You know, what happened between, I'm standing in the rain, it's like, wind is blowing and I feel alive, right? What happened to that? What happened to this? What happened to fully embracing life and jumping into an ocean and like, I'm gonna go through this, right? What happened to these kind of things? Well, shoes happened. Shoes like, I can't really walk anymore. People with shoes. It's crazy, people that wear shoes. There's better shoes now. Some forms of barefoot shoes, not all of them. Like I don't really like these Vivo barefoot things because it's more looking at style. It's more looking at style. But yeah. So hide and say nothing. If I do that or I try to do that, I just get more and more angry. I just get more and more angry because when I hide and say nothing, nothing happens. And now we're looking at the word responsibility. That is my ability to respond to certain things, right? Responsibility. Responsibility. People think it means I have to take responsibility for certain things, but what it actually means, I have the ability to respond to certain things. If I have responsibility for a child, then I have the ability to respond to the child's needs because I am in the position of being the parent, right? And if I'm governing a country and I'm complaining about climate change and I say the goal of 2 degrees will not be reached. Yeah, sure it won't. It's like, how do these people come up with this? It's just like words. People have gotten so used to just saying nonsense and everybody just sucks it up. It's like you just have to say random things and people just say, oh yeah, yeah, they're at it, they're solving the problem. That is so weird. How easily satisfied the mob is, or the general public. Because what's the mob? It's everybody. Everybody's so easily satisfied. And even, right, it's either they're just satisfied with it, they say, oh yeah, they're taking care of it, or they realize they're not taking care of it, and then they just give up. Then they just say nothing anymore. They say, oh, then I'm just gonna go off to some distant forest, yeah? And I'm just gonna, hide in a cave. That's the other side of the coin. It's either the people that just submit to the system or the people that just leave the country, and that just stop talking about these things because nobody wanted to hear them. Yeah, of course they don't want to hear them. Because if they would have to hear them, if they would be forced to listen to this kind of stuff, they would have to realize, oh my God, we really have to change something. And I know how difficult change was for me. It became kind of a habit to a certain degree. You change until you get to the place where you feel like, here I'm actually doing good. Here I can, this is working for me. I can get up most days, maybe with a smile, I'm kind of motivated, yeah, I like what I'm doing, that kind of stuff. But most people, they don't want to get there. They realize something's going very wrong in society, but they just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to make sacrifices. I mean, like, you have no idea how many people I know that sacrifice a great deal. I mean, I know somebody who started working on his mission where he wants to create like a global network to promote, to bring together people that do something good in the world and that want to fight against corruption and that want to fight against exploitation of the earth and nature, that have like very humanitarian but also environmental projects, and he wants to connect them, from all over the world and just do something nice with that. And this initiative is called We Future Global. You know, and I know him, and he started from scratch, and I know how hard he worked, because what he really likes is nature, and he hates it that it's being exploited. I mean, if he could choose his life, he'd probably do something else. I mean, you know, but he said, you know, I'm gonna pull through with it because, you know, it's pissing me off what they're doing to the planet. I mean, animals are living beings, and we just use them, I don't know, like lube to jerk off with. And when you see these things and you realize these things, I mean, don't you sometimes think you just want to change that? Right, for me, it's a lot also about the forests, because, you know, all these problems that we have, but it's not just the forests, because it's also the people that I see day in and day out. You know, I just have to look out the window and I see how sick everybody is. And then I think, you know, man, why don't we just change that? Why don't we just do something about this? Why don't we just take responsibility? Why don't we just use our ability to respond to this situation in a way that makes sense? Because that's what makes sense. It makes no sense to keep talking about climate change, but to just do nothing, because that's what is happening. Every couple of years, there's like a global gathering where all the big players, you know, that make money with things like climate change, you know, they all get together and then they sit around talking, and then they say, we're going to fix this problem, but they haven't done anything about it because they've all been bribed already. You cannot wait for them to do this. They don't want to do this because they're using the earth to keep getting richer and richer and richer. You know, that's what they're doing. Do you think people who make movies really care about the environment? No, if they would, they wouldn't make movies. Do you think Disney gives a crap? I mean, have you ever worked at a cinema? Do you know how much trash only one cinema generates? That's one cinema in the entire world. It's like truckloads of trash every year. That's one cinema. For the promotion of these movies, how many posters they just, you know, that are just being sent to them that they never use. At one point they just chucked them out. It's like 20 posters for one movie. 20 posters, you know. And then you have these really big posters. What do you do with these things? Well, either people come around that really like the movie and they want to buy it, or you just throw it away. I mean, all the food is like being in paper things, like all the popcorn. And then people come there, and then they sit down in a chair, and then they watch the movie, and then they go. And they think nothing. Like, they don't think about what the impact of one cinema is. And now imagine how many cinemas alone exist in Germany or in the whole world. How many cinemas are there? And then all the people that sit at home, because, you know, if it would be just the cinemas, but now everybody has their own cinema at home. Like, how many TVs and how many people, they buy one TV and the TV is still working, but they think they should have a bigger TV now. And then they buy a bigger TV. It's like, I mean, I used to go to the cinema when it was still really full. And I thought, you know, during that time it was quite nice, right? I mean, you connected with each other, you had a laugh together. It was a real experience. It felt like that. But now, you know, people don't even want to leave the house to go to the cinema anymore. They just want to sit at home. I mean, this stuff, the internet, it's just sucking everybody in. All these electronic devices, It used to be something special to go and watch a movie. Now it's just like eating M&Ms. Like, it's just eating in general. So who's gonna take responsibility? Because apparently the states aren't doing it. So you have to take responsibility. You have to respond to the shit in your own life. In your own life. You have to confront your own lies. You have to confront your own nonsense. And you have to start doing something about this. Because nobody else will do this. We've tried to let them handle the situation, but they don't manage. Because believe it or not, they have a lot on their plate to keep this shit show going. Because these systems, they have to produce money. Where is it gonna come from? Every country is in debt. We have created money, and money is something that you create from thin air. Because money in itself doesn't exist. It's virtual money. Money has nothing. It's something that's been created in your mind and that you give a lot of value to. But money in itself it's a virtual thing. So whether you have Bitcoin or whether you have this other kind of money, it's virtual anyway. Because you label something with a certain value and then you say, the price of 1 kilo of meat has the value of 7 euros. That's the value you put onto a bunch of animals that had to be born, that had to be fed, that had to be butchered, that had to be mashed together, minced into something where you can't even tell anymore that it was once a living being, and then it had to be sent around the world. And that's then for 1 kilo, 7 euros. That's the value we put onto meat. 1 egg, how much does it cost? A couple of cents. So we value the work a chicken does with 10 cents. That's the value of a chicken giving birth and being trapped in a cage. I was once, when I was in Africa, we went to a village and we got a chicken because we wanted to, butcher our own meat. Because in Africa you can do that more easily than in countries like this, where you say, it has to be done proper, by machines. In a mass production side, it has to be like... I mean, I'd rather do this myself if I would do it at all. I'd rather have a chicken and a knife, piece of wood, and then I also know where my meat is coming from. And I appreciate it much more. Anyway, we got a chicken, and that was from it was an egg-laying chicken that was in a cage all the time. And was in a cage all the time so that it couldn't run around and waste its energy with running around. It was supposed to sit there and lay eggs. The one thing I can say for that chicken, it was very tasty, in the sense that it was fat, it was soft, but what it was lacking was the ability to walk. You would put that chicken down on the ground and it couldn't even stand up because it was so used, it never used its legs. And that's, do you know how many hours I'm standing during the day? I don't have a couch. This is my resting place. I mean, you've seen that. It's not very couch-like. It's not like super soft. If I want to lay down on this, it's proper hard. It's proper hard. So when people that sit a lot, they just get weak. They literally lose the ability to stand straight. If some people would be here in my room with me, and every time I would stand, they would stand, oh boy, they'd have a real problem to keep up with me. To stand here all the time, to do all these things that I'm doing, they would have a proper hard time. I like the word proper now. Because that's what we need to do. We need to do things proper again, right? We need to do things proper, like properly live. So how do you respond to all this nonsense in your life? All these watching movies, constantly being obsessed with your phone, waiting for letters that never come. I know that feeling. you know, you feel so lonely that you just order packages so that, you know, at least the postman is coming to your door. That's why people order packages sometimes. Because they want the person to deliver it to them, so they at least have the feeling there's somebody they're having contact with. And often that is because all the people in your life probably are very miserable. Very, very miserable. And so the responsibility is you can actually respond to that. You know, you can take responsibility for yourself and you can respond to these problems in your own life. Because when you first try to fix climate change, then it has you by the balls. You know, you first fix your own life and then you try to think about how to fix climate change. I mean, you can sit around and think about all these problems that we have in the world. But who's then going to fix your problem? Well, you know, I first started with myself because I first wanted to get to a point where I can stand a lot, where I can talk a lot, where I can feel comfortable doing this for hours. So I first had to work on the things that make me heavy, you know, and I'm just standing here showing you. It's like yeah. Wow. So at one point, we just have to start moving more, right? So if I realize that I'm weak and that I cannot stand for 2 hours straight, you can do that as a practice. You can stand in your room and just try to position yourself in a way that feels comfortable. And then you can start, right? I mean, maybe you like watching movies. So watch a movie while you're standing. You put on the screen and then you put on a movie and then you just try to keep standing. But you move. But you move with this, right? You watch the movie and when you realize how tight and how stiff your shoulders are, well, you don't have to do like really extravagant moves, right? This comes later. Because how do you think to do this if your body is stiff and your muscles aren't really developed? I don't even know if that looks good to anyone, but it looks to me really nice. So the first thing you want to do, you know, is to build up your stamina. So you stand a lot. Then you will realize how weak your legs are, how fucked your back is. Well, and once you realize that, well, that's your motivation right there. You start moving more, right? You start moving more. Like, do you know I do all of these things for fun? Just because, you know, only because it's nice, like this. I realized that holding it like this is very, very exhausting. So I make transition. Something like that, right? You know, I don't really watch a lot of stuff. I inspire myself by looking at certain things on the internet. But I don't really listen to people talk about this. And then at one point, I just start doing this by myself. So instead of hiding and saying nothing, it's better to simply prepare yourself to actually speak about these things. But first you have to prove to yourself that you can actually do this. You have to prove to yourself that you have the ability to outgrow yourself and to outmaneuver your own weakness by building up strength, right? That's the way I think it actually works. But you have to start somewhere. And if we want to start as humanity to change out of this mess and take responsibility, We have to start responding to the mess in our own lives. And when we have cleaned up the mess, emotional mess, and everything else in our own lives, then we can join other people that speak up out there. Yeah, so there are people like me that create content, that talk about these things. You just have to find the one that you like. Right, so you either hide and say nothing, or you take responsibility. Yo, that was that.